I got issues. Enough. We're gonna get straight into it, guys. Straight into it. John. A lightly accented mouth called out from above him. John jolted out of his downward spiraling thoughts and looked up with a smile on his face, grateful for the distraction. Leaning out of a window set several meters above the ground was a familiar dark-haired man in hideously ugly clothes. It would seem like last night's reprieve wasn't a permanent change. If anything, the get-up was even worse than it was the first time he saw it. John forced himself to look at Antonio's face and nowhere else. Do you seriously have no other clothes? John blurted out. My wardrobe Guys, I got it. My wardrobe choices are none of your concern. I'm the one who has to look at it, John said. John wasn't sure why he was trying to pick a fight with Antonio, of all people, when he should be trying to get on the older man's good side. But John's mouth had a tendency to say things without his brain's input. Thankfully, he didn't appear to take offense beyond a half-hearted huff of annoyance. Is that what you all say to yourself? Antonio said. What do you mean? John said, puzzled at the older man's sudden good cheer. This was a far cry from the mood Antonio was in the last couple of times they talked. Did Antonio take a hit from Captain Levi for him and get brain damage or something? He might not know Markin. Who the frick is Markin, guys? Who's Markin, guys? He might not know Marco's cousin very well, but John spent enough time around the guy to know that Antonio made him nervous. And yet this conversation was almost pleasant. Was it his imagination, or was something weird going on? Antonio rested his chin on... I'm fumbling! Antonio rested his chin on his crossed arms and sighed. Did you forget our bet? He asked, with an amused smile. Bet? John's... John's brows furrowed in confusion. Wasn't that resolved already? John didn't say he wasn't going to stop until he figured out the true identity of the jerk who woke him up and kicked him out. But he did that already. Well, okay. It was actually Alan who figured it out. But when John called Antonio by his name last night, the older man had shown no signs of remembering their little wager. John assumed that meant that the fight didn't mean much to him. And John put it out of his mind. So why would Antonio choose to bring it up now? It's getting juicy! It's getting juicy, guys! It's getting juicy! No, it wasn't his imagination. There really was something weird about Antonio today. John was too tired to make sense of anything last night, but now was a different story. Now, he would get John's full attention. You can give up if you'd like. Oh, wait. Freak! You can give up if you'd like. I won't hold it against you. Antonio offered graciously. In your dreams, John retorted. I'll figure out who you are. Just you wait. Just thought I'd ask. So what's up? John shifted his weight and noted how Antonio's eyes immediately darted to the injured leg and arm. Now that was interesting. Shut up, bro. Oh my goodness. Can't you see I'm trying to record here? God. So inconsiderate. Did you need to tell me anything? Are you allowed to be walking around so soon? Jean stood up straight. No. But so what? You're not my mom. He allowed the injured leg to quiver slightly, as if it was actually causing him trouble, before locking his knee and crossing his arms over his chest. Then, Jean summoned up the most stubborn and sullen scowl he could muster, and let it settle over his face. Luckily, Jean hadn't bothered to change the bandages on his leg yet, and a bit of the old blood seeped through the fabric of his pants. It definitely looked worse than it really was. If this really was the same Antonio that carried John all the way back to the Scouting Legion's headquarters to be tended, then... Wait. Dogs are barking. Ah! I think they're done barking now. Okay. Then he should already know that John's leg injury was actually very minor. Of course! Most difficult, most normal day in Ohio. Sorry. I'm being stupid. I'm not funny. Okay, guys, throw rocks at me. Then he should already know that Sean's leg injury was actually very minor. Sean had concealed far worse injuries as a trainee. But Antonio didn't back down, as would be expected. Instead, he frowned, and his head briefly disappeared from view, followed by the sound of books and other objects being moved, before he reappeared. Antonio leaned further out of the window to reach down to offer a hand to Jean. Come on, then, he said. Jean stared at the hand. What? Give me your hand, he said with an exasperated expression. I'm going to pull you up so you can get off that leg. Hurry up. I can just sit down here, you know, Jean said slowly, pointing at the ground. No, you're sitting where I can keep an eye on you. Antonio wiggled his fingers. Hurry up, Sean. The window frame is digging into my stomach. Sean made a big show of rolling his eyes before taking Antonio's hand. Antonio gave a grunt of exertion as he braced himself, holding steady as Jean scrambled up the big stones of the building exterior and reached for the window frame. Once he was certain that Jean had a good grip and wasn't in danger of falling, Antonio grabbed hold of the harness belts at Jean's waist and hauled them up the rest of the way. Damn, you've gotten heavy, Antonio complained. Oh my goodness, he's selling! Jean sprawled over Antonio's lap, but the guy didn't try to force Jean to move. No normal person would be so blasé, I don't know that word, about someone they just met and didn't really like invading their personal bubble like this. But the only thing the dark-haired man did was lean back. His hand rested on the small of Jean's back, where he had been gripping the harness, and his dark eyes slid shut. With Antonio's attention focused on catching his breath, Jean took the opportunity to study the man's face. Jean looked past the distracting goggles and scarf to take note of the lack of tension in his features. Jean studied the painfully familiar line of his jaw. Oh my god, I'm gonna sneeze! Excuse me. I'm gonna give you guys like 5 more minutes, because it's really getting juicy, okay? It's getting real juicy. Real juicy. Jeez, my allergies. Alright. Where it was marred was the extensive scar tissue that crawled up his neck and over the bridge of his nose before disappearing into his hairline. The scar tissue still looked shiny and raw in places, but the undamaged side of his face, with what little visibility past the huge goggles, had a little dusting of freckles. Wait. That's it. That's what was bothering him so much. This is what Jean saw but didn't really see. Not until now. It was against his will, but he really didn't like the indignity of it at the time. But Jean was thankful now that he was forced to... so close. But Jean was thankful now that he was forced so close enough to Antonio's face. It wasn't just scar tissue, like he had originally assumed, and without the distraction of the colorful outfit, Jean actually was able to see just how extensive the damage to the veteran soldier's face really was. The damage to Antonio's face was mostly concentrated on his right side, like it was now. But it wasn't evenly spread. His jaw and cheek got the worst of it, whatever it was, with some minor damage to his neck and shoulder. But the most serious damage was done to the bone structure of his face, and not even the scouting legions, or maybe garrisons. Best soldiers can straighten it out completely. And now the scars extended the way... What the heck? And now the scars extended all the way from his hairline, down to the side of his neck, and past the collar of his shirt. Jean cringed to look at it, to think about what could have caused such damage. But the key point was that the scarring was equally awful. But the most telling thing of all wasn't the scars. No, it was the way the older man didn't react to Jean's blatant invasion of his personal space. It was a different story from yesterday, and Jean wasn't vain enough to think that he managed to thoroughly charm Antonio while he was unconscious dead weight. But wait, maybe Antonio was just too lazy and tired that Jean was lying across his lap. Why do I keep missing words? But wait, maybe Antonio was just too tired to care that Jean was lying across his lap. Time to test it out. Jean got up, mumbling some excuse about not wanting to fall out the window or land face first into the library floor, and climbed over the man to sit down on his right. He sat the side closest to the library's interior, which had the most space. It also happened to be the same side that Jean used to always take back in the barracks. As a trainee, and he settled against the man's side in an overly familiar way. Loud. Okay? In an overly familiar way that was guaranteed to provoke a response. And it worked. But not in the way Jean expected. Or rather, it was exactly the response Jean was looking for, but didn't dare to expect. The older man, eyes still closed, lifted his arm out the way when he realized Sean... Wake me up before I go. Okay. The older man, eyes still closed, lifted his arm out of the way when he realized what John was doing and dropped it around the younger boy's shoulder when he sat down. His fingers immediately buried themselves in the short, dark brown hair at the base of Jean's skull. He shifted to rest his head against Jean's with a soft sigh, just the way he always did back then, when he used to force Jean to give up his blankets and pillows because his just weren't enough to make a sufficiently cozy cocoon, because he wasn't happy unless Jean was pressed against his side and in danger of dying from a combination of heat stroke and boredom, because that freckled nuisance liked having company when he read his books in languages that John couldn't understand. Sean didn't know if he should laugh or cry or punch the asshole right in his face. Instead, he narrowed his eyes and mumbled, "Marco?" in a half-asleep voice that was straight out of those memories. And the idiot replied, "Yes, Sean?" I'm stopping it right there. We can continue the next video, guys. Hopefully I didn't blow your eardrums out from all the yelling. Goodbye.